Uh-oh, I'm interested. Let's find out. This comes from Yahoo Finance. IRS cracks down on side hustles. Why?
And today, we're focusing on some side hustles out there. According to a 2024 Bankrate survey, 36% of U.S. adults earn extra income through a side hustle. Now, the IRS is cracking down on unreported online income, and that means big changes for millions of Americans. Here with me to help, we've got Carla Dennis, KDA Inc. CEO and founder. Great to have you here in studio with us, all the way from California.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Let's dive into this. What are the big changes for side hustles this year?
Yeah, so this year, IRS is requiring the merchant vendors like Yale and different things like that to actually send to side hustle people a 1099-K. That means that if they have any income over $600, they are now going to get a 1099 form. That's going to be different as opposed to last year, you had to make over $20,000 and 200 transactions.
That's a drastic difference for a lot of people.
Drastic change.
And so as we're thinking about some of the expenses, say you have a side hustle, say you're a freelancer as well, what are the expenses that freelancers can deduct to lower their taxable income?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is freelancers need to realize that they're really in business. So they can take any expense that they incur to generate that income. And some of the expenses that they can incur would be like their car expenses, their cell phone expenses, home office expenses, things that they might not even think about, computers, internet, anything a normal business owner would take.
And so what tips do you have for people with a side hustle before they file?
One of the things that they should do before they file is realize all those personal expenses that they're using for business, transition over and start actually taking it as a business deduction. Things like their car, their cell phone, things they're paying out of pocket, their meals, their travel, they should definitely take that now as business. In addition to that, they want to have a separate bank account for their business. Don't commingle funds, because when you commingle funds, IRS can classify those expenses as personal, and you could lose those deductions.
No, that's a great point to make sure that you don't trigger any red flags with the IRS. None of us want to do that. And so as we're thinking about why some of the drastic changes have taken place, I mean, we're talking about going from $20,000 as the threshold to $600. Why do you think that is, and how many more people does this potentially impact and bring into this?
Yeah, I think because our government is looking for opportunities to generate revenue. That's the IRS's entire purpose, is to get revenue for the government. So many people, especially during COVID, created side hustles, created these businesses, and they know that there's a lot of unreported income going on. So IRS is looking to crack down, get all the income reported, and making sure they collect the appropriate amount of tax.
Very valuable tips. Carla, thanks so much for taking the time here with us.
You heard it there, folks. IRS says, hey, we gonna need a little something off of that, bro. You wanna be an entrepreneur? You have a side hustle, you make it how much? Anything over $600, we gonna need that. We gonna send you a form so you could take your proper protocol for us to, you know what I'm saying, get a little piece of that. Because here in America, God forbid, God forbid you try to find some extra ways to make a living out here as if things aren't hard enough as is. Nah, we need something. We got to tax that too, because it's still going to the roads. Remember, your taxes are going to the roads and pays the salaries of. Some people will say, oh, well, why don't you just take that money that you're sending off to fill in the blank? Don't want to ruffle any feathers. Take some of that money that you're sending off to X, Y, and Z, as opposed to taxing the folks more who are trying to make an extra living for themselves. U.S. government, man. U.S. government. One number that I thought was interesting, that I did think was interesting, of course, was at the beginning of this video. They spoke how 36% of U.S. adults earn an income with a side hustle. This was reported, of course, by Bankrate. Shout out to Bankrate. I used to work at Bankrate. Earning income with a side hustle, 2024. It says here 36% of U.S. adults were earning income from a side hustle. Folks, I think this number needs to be substantially higher because we see the times that we're living in right now. This number needs to be at least 50. It's very scary right now. myself included, anybody that's out there in the world, to have one source of income, especially if it's corporate America income, being that we now learn that anybody can get it at any different time. Blue collar, white collar, I don't care if you've been at your job 10 years, 15 years, senior, just that, blah, 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 blah. Anybody can get it. So I'm happy to see that 36%, of course, this is just reported. I don't know how accurate this number is. Of course, this comes from Bankrate. Again, this video itself comes from Yahoo Finance. 36% of U.S. adults, are earning income with a side hustle. This number is going to grow substantially if it hasn't already, folks, especially in 2025. But yeah, I like this number, of course, seeing that 36% of U.S. adults, of course, are earning income from a side hustle, 36%. I do think this number is going to grow substantially, especially within 2025, being that people are getting laid off and looking for alternative means of income. So at 36%, basically, again, this video is basically talking about how the IRS is cracking down on all of that. Of course, you see the title here. The video is entitled Taxes and Side Hustles, Big Changes with New IRS Rules. So, of course, the gentleman you heard him there was saying that, the IRS is basically, at first, the threshold was $20,000. If you're making $20,000, what are the cases, and then X amount of transactions, I think they said 200 transactions, then you would report. So they took that number now from $20,000 to $600. If you're making anything over than $600 within your side hustle, the IRS is going to need a little something off of that. And folks, I don't necessarily know how I feel about that, being that it is already hard enough as is to make it off of one stream of income. God forbid you find another stream of income, the IRS wants some of that as well too. Sometimes, folks, I don't necessarily, again, I'm not an economist. Full disclaimer, I don't know. People say checks and balances and this, that, and the other. I don't know none of that. But basically, how I kind of look at it, how I'm seeing it, man, people are trying to find other means to make a living out here. They've already increased the prices of groceries. There's inflation. They're talking about recessions. Now that you feel like you found another side hustle to make ends meet, the government is now telling you, hey, if it's over $600, look out for a 1099 form. We're going to need some of that. Damn, bro. I'm just trying to put food on the table, pay my rent. Taxes. But then again, you always hear the news. They sent X trillion dollars here. They spent this on here. They spent money on this here. Blah, 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 blah. We just trying to survive, man. We're just trying to survive out here, folks. That's all we're trying to do. Very interesting story. Again, of course, that comes from Yahoo Finance. Tax season is upon us. Coming in April. This is a reminder to myself because taxes are indeed always a thing. What else we got?